So this is the first of many examples I intend to publish, considering the fact that I played a King's Bishop Gambit almost exclusively as an e4 player against the e5 response. I consider the King's Bishop Gambit to be superior to the King's Gambit. I love it when people play King's Gambit against me. I win literally all the time, and I'm going to show you what I do against the King's Gambit that we can't do against the King's Bishop Gambit. King's Bishop Gambit is characterized by e4, e5, f4, and then the fact that he takes the pawn, you move bishop to c4 right away instead of knight to f3 allows him to check on h4 with his queen, and then you move king to b1. So if that makes people squeamish, don't watch this, because the fact is that the King's Bishop Gambit is a really old-fashioned romantic chess where you move your king and you lose your castling rights instantly. And by the way, modern computers don't really approve of the check and the king move. They think that's a Potzer type play. Predicted by Emanuel Lasker, once again, way back when in Common Sense and Chess, who considered to be he preferred other moves. So the fact is that if you develop quickly and you open the F file and use it, you have a tremendous advantage in getting that bishop out of there, attacking the F7 square. And that's the first principle of the King's Bishop Gambit. The second is, and this is hard to try to realize in practice, is to develop the Queen's Knight first rather than the King's Knight. Sometimes you have to develop the King's Knight, and if he's going to threaten mate on F2 or something, you have to do that. You have to chase that queen out of there if he's checked. However, there are many variations in which you can get away with just not developing the King's Knight for quite a while and keep that diagonal open, as I talk about right here. If you develop the Queen's Knight, you have a hop to d5 in a lot of cases in coordination with a lot of really interesting tactics that go against black's position. You keep the d1 to h5 diagonal open for your queen. Then you have lots of traditional scholar mate type cheapos, and you have the h4 move with a pawn to undermine his bulkhead of a pawn that sits on your f4 square. So that also has the additional it has the additional, you can develop rooks that way, lots of other things. So anyway, we're going to get to the first game. There are lots of games here and lots of variations of this, so I just want to show you an example of one. Once again, we're going to play it against a very strong player. All these players on the 2100s or more, unless I tell you otherwise. So computer says, of course, f4 is a mistake. So this is fully annotated by Stockfish 8. However, we're looking at it in another engine. This is the King's Bishop Gambit, and as you can see, we're allowing a check, which he does not do. And this is called the Bulga-Yubov variation, which is kind of interesting. And here I adhere to another principle, which is move knight to c3 early. The computer says c3, c6, c6, c6. So even Stockfish says c6 here. However, you can tell whether or not you've got somebody who's unfamiliar with this order of development by how soon they put their bishop on c5, which simply gets chased. It's not the worst move in the world, but it is an accuracy. Give me plenty of time to develop. I think that due to this person's higher rating, he was doing this on purpose in order to attack my e4 pawn and provoke this move. Now it says he should move knight to e4, which he does, and I move queen over, which he does. Now he chooses to check. Okay, so obviously I only have a few places to go where I don't get forked by the knight, and f1's it pretty much, and I moved to f1, but notice the computer has us up, so now he's suggesting knight checks. Look at that. Interesting, which is what got played during the game. He took the bishop first, though, so he takes the bishop, and it's suggesting I take the queen. I'm up almost a whole point. Look at that. I take queen takes knight, which I don't do. This is something, of course, that I missed. If you just moved knight to g5 or something, I'd have just taken the f-pawn and had a decent game. So now it's suggesting moves knight to g5 again. White still has an advantage. And it is interesting because what we have is we have a very weak f4 pawn on black's part, and we have a couple bishops, and we have what appears to be a good position. So white should be up. Now he checks in this game, winning my rook, and the fact is that I foresaw this and I played for it actually. So now he takes the rook, and I get some more development. So now what you see is I have almost everything developed. He's got almost nothing developed, and even more interestingly, if you look at where his queen is, the only square it can move to where it's not captured is h2. And so he moves knight to c6, which is the computer move. I move rook to e1. It suggested king to f2 right away. Now, Stockfish wants knight to a5. Well, this program wants knight to e7. In either case, white's got a healthy advantage. My opponent castled. And as you can see, castling turns out to be the fatal move. This is the loser. Because after king to f2, he's faced with doom and destruction. So king to f2 threatens to trap the queen with knight to h3. And then it's a matter of what are we going to do to get that queen. And if you look very carefully, it's not too hard to get the queen after he goes to h2 because there's a bishop that can attack it in a discovered fashion. So now it suggests queen to h2 right away. And actually Stockfish wanted b5. The current engine wants knight to e7. Or rather, he played knight to e7, queen to h2. Pardon me for studying this game. I haven't seen what the engine says about it. So knight to h3, and he's forced to take, which he doesn't do. Now I'm up 7. We push pawn. And yes, this is different kind of chess. This is old-fashioned, romantic, fairly ugly-looking chess. And my opponent resigned at this point. So as you can see, the King's Bishop Gambit is a dangerous weapon. However, you have to put up with a Steinitz-like king that's dancing all over the place. And in my opinion, it's a very strong opening for white. I'm sure lots of people will correct this.